What is your exam date?
For EML?
Yes.
The 29th,
29th
October.
29th of October.
Yes.
And have you looked at your timetable? Is it a one-day exam or does it stretch over more than 1 days?
It's a one-day exam from 8:15 to 2:15.
8:15 till 2:15.
That's correct.
And what is it? Is it it's not multiple choice?
Well, we don't know.
Do you have no idea?
No.
Well, from 8:15 till 2:15 definitely means that you're going to not be online for all of the time. So I get the sense that it might not be multiple choice. It could involve some multiple choice. But if normally for the duration of so many hours, it means that you're going to download the question paper and then you will start answering, which means it's an open book exam that you may use your resources and that it's written answers that you will have to provide.
Our semester exams was more or less the same time, and all those exams was MCQs.
All of them?
Yes.
For that long duration, really?
Yes.
So you were able to use your resources and you didn't have to provide any written answers?
No, not at all.
Okay, so you could use your study material to answer those MCQs?
Well, I'm sure you can.
Yeah, because otherwise they would have said something about it, and it is impossible to control that, so that will not be the case. And more or less, what was your experience in terms of, were you able to complete in time? Did you have enough time? Was it quite pressurized, or could you make a cup of coffee in between?
So I was just rushing for time when I wrote mine because I didn't know whether I would have enough time or not.
Okay.
For example, some of the MCQs was up to like 100 questions.
Okay.
So you just like go through them and hopefully have enough time. But I know that like the download of the exam paper, it does take a bit of time due to the fact that everyone's downloading.
Yes.
And they do say that you get 15 minutes in the beginning to download, and then I think it's 30 minutes in the end to upload.
Yes.
So yeah, when I wrote which was my first semester exam, I just wanted to get everything done and upload it so that I don't, have to stress about the time closing. Okay.
And let's just quickly talk about this because it's very important. The uploading and downloading, or the downloading of your question paper and the uploading of your answers. Please do not think because you have so much time that you should start downloading your question paper 15 minutes after the starting time. As Danae just said, remember that many students, not just for this module, are logging on at the same time. And that means because it's going through My UNISA, it is not as fast as you expect it to be. So make sure, and this is just one of the things that I've experienced in the past, make sure that your computer is freshly restarted. In other words, if you worked the previous night, shut down your computer, get up early enough and restart your computer as fresh as possible before you start downloading that question paper. Make sure that you not that you don't start Googling and doing stuff while you are waiting. Keep your computer nice and fresh. That does help. With the uploading of, okay, let's just pause there for a moment. So what happens in the event of you are downloading your question paper and something happens that your session times out? Or your system is so slow that it takes you longer than the allowed time to download your question paper. The two things that you do. You have to email your lecturer immediately. So make sure that you have your lecturer's details with you on that morning of the exams. Okay. Remember, UNISA has almost 500,000 students writing online exams. So the traffic is busy. Don't underestimate that. Make sure that you have enough data. If anything happens that is outside of your control and something goes wrong, make sure that you make screenshots, which, if at all possible, that the time is visible on your computer in your screenshot, or type the email immediately saying, this is the time of the email, this is what happened at that time, so that your window period of what happened and your email to report your technical issue is not too long for them to say, but what happened in between? Because you must also remember some students are really unnecessary also during these times. The other thing that you do is you write an email to, I'm putting the email address in the chat function here. It's ctntat@unisa.ac.za. If it is a general technical issue that we can quickly see, oh, but you haven't done that, it will be able for us to respond. But you have to copy, in that email, you copy 3 areas. You write the email to your lecturer, you CC CTNTAT and exams@unisa.ac.za. Okay. Now, many people have had very beautiful experiences last semester. And some people have experienced technical issues on their side and UNISA's technical issues. The only thing you mustn't do during that time is don't stress. Remember, I'm giving you very important pointers here for how can you make sure that if anything goes wrong, that you are covered. Are there any students in this group where you have made the choice last semester to not write the exams but write it manually? Just hold on a moment. Sorry about that. Have any of you made the decision to write this semester? And I mean the same subject. You just microphone muted. Okay. Or are all of you freshly writing this module this semester?
Adele, this is a CML is a year module, so we writing it at the end.
Right, it's a year module. That's right.
Yes.
So have you all of you had experiences last semester with online exams? Colin, did you write anything last semester?
No, I didn't write anything last semester. This is my first online.
Okay. Akila?
No, I didn't write anything.
Okay. All right. The feedback that we got from the majority of students was that it was a very pleasant experience. And that's the attitude that you should have when you go into the exams. As I said, just make sure that all the technical preparation from your side have been done. And if anything goes wrong, don't stress about it. In many instances, there's nothing that you can do about it at that point in time. If this is the other thing, if anything happens that you are struggling to download it, be patient, because it's just, if you look at the internet tonight, it's very slow. If you have rain and storms on that side, it's also going to be slow. And that's why I'm saying the moment the clock hits 8:15, you make sure that you start downloading. Okay, don't start your computer then. You must start downloading then. There are many ways to do things legally. If you, for and anybody else can assist you by emailing the question paper to you, you may make use of that. Make sure communicate with the students. Remember, might say nothing, but someone might say something. So don't take any chance. Stay in the clear. The other thing that you need to remember is don't get stressed. Pace yourself. If you have 100 questions, quickly work out how many questions do you have to do every 15 minutes. Okay. Danae, when you experienced that last semester, were you done way before the time, or were you just done in time?
I wasn't done way before the time in all of them, that I can say honestly. I can't remember how much time I had left, but I just know that it wasn't like hours.
Yes. Okay.
I know for example, the one we wrote, I think it was the TAM, Teacher as a Manager exam. Yeah. There was technical problems in that exam. The system was offline, and it was quite a stressful time. Yes. Because I did email the lecturer, but I didn't get any response back, and I didn't know that the system was offline. I thought that the problem was only on my side.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and then we only ended up writing the next morning.
Yes. Now, just bear in mind that that's something that could also happen, that everybody's experiencing technical issues. Make sure that you have somebody that you can check in with on WhatsApp saying, are you also experiencing a problem? And then don't stress any further, because they will then choose a new exam date. I know that's very frustrating. We're going to assume that everything will go well. The only thing you must not do is, please do not bargain on this being an MCQ and you will have enough time to consult your study material. MCQs don't work like that. MCQs are very cleverly designed in a way that you won't have time, if you haven't prepared, to go and work through your study material and fall around and look for stuff. By that time, you need to know your study material so well that if you're unsure about an answer, you will know where to go and find the answer. Okay, I'm now not going to delay this any further, but it is a discussion that we should rehash before you end your sessions with Portia, but she's online now, so you can start your session. Okay, good luck, everyone.
Thank you. Good evening, Adele. Good evening, students. Apologies for being late. I had a few technical issues. Hopefully it's sorted by now. So tonight, let me just say hi to everyone again.
Hi, Portia.
Hi, Adele.
Are
Good
you
evening,
alive?
students. Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just had technical issues, but hopefully everything is sorted now.
Yes, you see, that happens, ain't?
Yes, yes, it does. Right. Students, tonight will be speaking about lesson planning because I had a query on lesson planning and I decided to do it in class because all of you must know how to draw up a lesson plan when teaching. Just a moment while I upload my slide, please. Right, students, is my slide visible to you?
Yes, it
Colin?
is.
All right, thank you. Now, students, please tell me what do you think, what is lesson planning? I'm sure you do lesson planning in your classes, those of you that's placed at schools already. What do you think, what is a lesson plan? Janae, what do you think is a lesson plan?
A lesson plan is basically the preparation you've done for your lesson. So it's basically outline everything that you will do in the lesson, like what your goals is, what the outcome you want for the lesson, and etc. It's just a really good baseline for you to look at and also use in future times again.
Yes, correct. Thank you. Colin, would you like to share your idea on lesson planning?
I agree with the night. It's basically a format of what you plan to do with your kids during the lesson.
Yes, thank you. Correct. Yes, a lesson plan is basically a teacher's daily guide. All right. Daily guide in the teacher is going to teach the learners what the learners need to learn and how it will be taught and how learning is measured. That is a lesson plan. Then lesson plans, they also ensures that every child in your class will benefit from it because we have to plan for all our learners because we're having a diverse group of learners in our classes. So the lesson plan ensures that every bit of class time is spent teaching the new concepts and also having meaningful discussions with your learners and not figuring out while you're busy with the lesson as to what to do during that lesson. Let's just continue. All right. There you can see the lesson plan is a teacher's daily guide, as I've mentioned. It's to guide your learners as to what they need to learn, how it will be taught, and how learning is measured. So what do you think, students, would be the advantages of having a lesson plan? Remember, the lesson plan is your guide. It will guide you as to what to cover in your lessons, during your lessons. So what do you think? What would be the advantages of having a lesson plan? Akila, what do you think? Janae?
Advantages might include that you know what to ask them, what type of questions to ask them to prompt the right answers, how to guide them when they're struggling. For example, you now know what you want to do, so the lesson flows quite nicely because you've planned it already, or maybe it's a lesson plan you've done already, so that you know where you can improve on the work, so that the students understand it better.
Yes, good. Thank you. Correct. Anyone else would like to add to the Janae's?
Again, maybe also with time management.
Yes, correct. That too. Thank you. Anyone else like to add? Yes, student. Would you like to share with us? All right. The advantages of having a lesson plan, first of all, is you'll have self-confidence as a teacher because you will be more prepared for class, and it will make you work then towards your goal. Because if you don't have a plan, you won't be comfortable at all. It's also for evaluation purposes. One of the advantages is evaluation. A lesson plan will help you as a teacher to evaluate and to compare the objectives that you've set for the lesson. So this evaluation then will help you in achieving setting new targets in a better way. Like Danae said, you will revise your lesson plan because now you can actually evaluate your strengths and your weaknesses. That will be determined by the outcome of how the learners perform during that lesson and understand that lesson. Then the other advantage is that it will give you guidance. Like I've said previously, your lesson plan is your daily guide. So it will guide you as to what to plan for, how to plan for it, and what you want to teach your learners. And it also helps with stimulation. When you have a lesson plan, it will stimulate you as a teacher, stimulate you to think in an organized way. Because if you're not prepared, your lesson will not flow logically. Right? So stimulation will help you as a teacher to think in an organized way or manner. Then it will also give you a better understanding of your objectives with the lesson. All right? So through a lesson plan, you will be able to understand the objectives of the lesson that you've planned properly, and you will also make sure that your learners will understand the objectives too. Lastly, through drawing up a lesson plan, it will inspire you as a teacher to improve on the lesson plan further, because through lesson planning when you're done with the lesson, you will be able to identify your strengths and your weaknesses. Therefore, the lesson plan is there to guide you as to improve your lesson plan if it was not successful. You can then make it better for the purpose of achieving the lesson plan in a better way. Are you all clear on the advantages of a lesson plan? Would anyone would like to add to that? Because remember, the advantages is to inspire you as a teacher, and you will gain self-confidence. It will serve as evaluation purpose for yourself. It will guide you during your lesson. It will also stimulate you to think in an organized way while you present your lesson. And you will also understand the objectives and also make it clear, the objectives clear to your learners in the classroom. Anyone have a question for me? Are you all clear on this slide? Danae, are you clear? Colin?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank
All
you.
right. Akila, you good with the slide? All right. So why do you think is the importance of a lesson plan? What do you think, students, is the importance of a lesson planner? All right. Like I've said, is to gain self-confidence, evaluate yourself, guidance, stimulation, and understanding the objectives of your lesson. Remember, as the saying goes, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And we don't want that in our classrooms. So then, what is the need for lesson plan? When you draw up your lesson plan, you must make sure that lesson is properly organized, right? The lesson plan will also keep you as a teacher away from making mistakes, all right? Even though mistakes will happen sometimes, but remember, with this guide, you will not, or you will try not to make mistakes, because this guide will guide you. And with a lesson plan, you as a teacher also get a clear idea about when you should start evaluation with your class on a specific topic or a specific subject or a learning area. And as you know by now, if the learners are successful, they will progress to the next grade. Then lesson plans will also allow you as a teacher to apply appropriate strategies. What's important here is when you're prepared as a teacher, you will be confident while teaching the lesson. Are you all clear, students, or do I need to repeat? Is there any questions for me on this? Akila, are you clear on this? All right. So what do you think? What would be good, let's say, good characteristics of a lesson plan, students? What would you say is the characteristics of a lesson plan? How do you do it? What do you do? All right. A lesson plan is always in written format, whether it's type, whether it's in handwriting, it's in written format. All right. Then the general importance of lesson planning is that you clearly identify your objectives of your lesson. Remember, your objectives must be clearly identified when you set up your lesson plan. The lesson plan should also relate to a suitable method that you will use for a particular subject or learning area. Any questions on this so far? You all good with it? All right. And then the subject, the time that's allocated for that lesson, and the class should be mentioned in your lesson plan. You must also include important examples of what you would like to make use of in your lesson. So it's important to put examples in your lesson plan of what you would like to do in that during that specific lesson. Then in your lesson plan, the time for each topic should be predetermined. All right. Then in the lesson plan, the techniques and the supportive materials, for example, charts, maps, or visuals or audio material that you're going to use during a lesson should also be stated in your lesson plan. It is also important that your lesson plan or lesson planning, you must know that lesson planning is a thinking process. It is not just filling in of a lesson template. You must actually have a plan as to where you want to go or move to with your lesson plan. Remember, you must have specific objectives in mind of what you'd like to achieve during your lesson or during that week's planning. So, lesson planning is in a thinking process. It must also have a systematic approach for the teaching of the concepts, the skills, and the attitudes you'd like to teach the learners. All right. So important here to know is Your lesson plan is always in written format, in written form. And the general importance of it is to have a clear objective as to what you would like the learners to achieve. Your lesson plan and your, or let's say your teaching method must be suitable for the subject or the lesson that you've planned. Lesson plan will also allow you to constantly reflect on your shortcomings or your strengths. You must include the class, the time, and the subject in your lesson plan. And then also, lesson planning is not just filling in of the lesson plan, but it's a thinking process. So you must constantly think while you're busy with your lesson planning. And you must also allocate the time for each topic, or let's say for each lesson. You must put your time in there, the time spent or the time you need to spend with your learners. And you must also remember that the lesson plan is a systematic approach for the teaching of the concepts you would like the learners to know, the skills you want them to have, and also their attitudes. Are you all clear on this slide, or is there a question for me? Are you clear, students?
All clear, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Let's proceed. As you can see there on my slide, it's important to think while you're busy with your lesson plan or when you're planning your lesson plan, because here you have to ask yourself, who am I teaching? What grade am I teaching? What am I teaching? What subject or learning area am I going to teach? Or what concepts would I like the learners to understand? Most importantly, how am I going to teach it? What methods am I going to use? What strategies am I going to use to teach them the particular subject or learning area? Then also, you have to ask yourself, how will I know if the students understand? Now tell me, students, how will you know whether the children understand what you've taught them during that specific lesson? What will you do?
Maybe through an informal assessment.
Yes, correct. And with that said, informal assessment can be by giving them a worksheet to do, or you can basically just ask questions in class. Thank you, Danae. Anyone else would like to add to this slide? All right. Now let's just go through the setting up of the objectives of your lesson plan. How are you going to set it up? What are you going to include in your objective, setting up the objectives? All right. Firstly, there's a few things you must know when setting up objectives. You must identify the purpose for the whole lesson, the outcomes of the lesson, what the learners should know, the objective to determine the activities you want the learners to do during that specific class or lesson, and also to revise your goals, to determine the developmental level of your learners. So the first thing that you must do when you set the objectives in your lesson plan is, first of all, to create an objective. All right? The objective is normally a statement of the purpose for your lesson. Then this statement should answer what the learners will be able to do by the end of the lesson. All right? I should give you an answer as to what the learners should be able to do at the end of your lesson. And remember, your objective, the main objective, will then drive the whole lesson. So it's important for you to first create an objective, and that objective will drive your whole lesson. You as the teacher must also make sure that the objective of the lesson will determine the activities that the learners will be given, what activities you will give your learners, all right? Or what the learners will engage in. You must also make sure that the goals of lesson planning, you must also make sure that the goals of your lesson plan is compatible with the development level of the learners in your class. And you know, we have a diverse learners in our group of learners in our class. We have the auditory learner, that is the learners that learn best through listening. Get the visual learner, they learn better by reading, writing, and or by seeing visuals in your class. Then you also get the kinesthetic learner. This learner learns best while moving. So your lesson plan need to include all your learners, and the activities you give them must include all the learners in your class. Then the strategies, what do you think? Then you must select the lesson plan materials. Sorry, you must then select the lesson plan materials. All right. The lesson plan materials that you're going to use in your classroom, it must correlate with a textbook that you use in the class. All right. So your lesson plan materials must correlate with the textbook that you use in your classroom. Then there's certain lesson planning tools you can make use of. What do you think, students? What will that tools be? The tools that you will use in your class for lesson planning? Right. The tools you will use in your lesson, it can be technology. You can make use of a whiteboard. You can make use of an overhead projector. There's various types of technology you can make use of. You can make use of iPads in your class. You can have little projects in your class going. And this then, when you have different materials and tools in your classroom, or you incorporate it in your lesson, it will create an interesting atmosphere to the students. And we all know that students like the lesson to be interactive and interesting. Anyone have a question for me? Are you all good? Akila, are you fine?
Yes, thank you, ma'am.
All right, good.
Yes.
Now, all right, let's just move on to the strategies of a lesson plan, effective lesson plan. Right, like I've said before, the lesson plan is a teacher's daily guide. So it will be a sort of a roadmap for you of what learners need to learn and how it will be done. Right? So there's certain steps, strategies for an effective lesson plan. All right? You will ask yourself, what do I want learners to learn? What do I want them to learn? What teaching and learning activities will I use? You will also ask yourself, how will I check for understanding? And like Denise said, we can do it informally after the lesson by asking questions, handing out work sets. So let us move to the steps of for preparing your lesson plan. All right. As you can see, there's the steps. The first step is to outline the learning objectives. Secondly, you have to develop your introduction. You will plan for understanding, and you will also plan for specific learning activities. All right? I'm sorry, I see there's an error on my slide. So you will plan to check for understanding, and you will plan for specific learning activities. You will also develop a conclusion and preview. And lastly, you will create a realistic timeline. Now, if we look at the first step, outlining the learning objectives, that is when you determine what you want the learners to learn and be able to do at the end of your lesson. You have to ask yourself a few questions when you do this. Right? You will ask yourself, what will the topic be of my lesson? What do I want the learners to know? You will also ask yourself, what do I want them to understand? And most importantly, what would you like them to be able to do at the end of your lesson in order to make sure that they understand your lesson? Fourthly, you ask yourself, what do I want them to take away from this lesson, from that specific lesson? So once you've asked yourself all these questions, and once you outlined the learning objectives for your lesson, all right, you must then rank them in terms of the importance, all right? You will ask yourself, for example, what is the most important concept or the ideas or the skills or the attitudes you want your learners to be able to understand and to apply later on. And you must also determine why is it important? Why is that objective important? Secondly, you must develop your introduction. All right. Now that you identified your objective in order of importance, you must now get together the specific activities you want them to use to understand and to apply what they've learned during that lesson. So once you've identified the objectives in order of its importance, you will now design specific activities that you want the learners to do, because now you want to see if they can apply what they've learned. And remember, because you will have, like I've mentioned many a times now, a diverse body of learners with different academic levels and experiences. Some of them may be familiar with the topic and some of them may not be familiar with the topic that you have planned for that specific lesson. So that is why you might have to start with a question, to get into the learner's prior knowledge, all right? To see if they understand what the topic is all about. And if not, you will explain the topic during your lesson. Thirdly, you will plan the specific learning activities you want them to do after the lesson. You can prepare it in several ways, all right? But please try and explain the lesson to them with real life examples. Have visuals. Have audio in your class as well. This you will have to catch the learner's attention first of all. You must also ask yourself a few questions to help you design the learning activities you want to use in classroom. You have to ask yourself, what will I do to explain the topic? How will I explain the topic to the learners? What will I do to illustrate the topic in different ways? Because remember, you have auditory, visual, kinesthetic learners in your classroom. So how will I illustrate the topic in different ways? How can I get the learners engaged in the topic? You must also think of some real life examples, like situations, for example, that can help the learner to understand the topic. Also ask yourself, what will the learners need to do to help them understand the topic better? Then we move on to the fourth step. Plan to check for understanding. Now that you've explained the topic and yes.
Sorry, Portia, we already did step 3, which was plan to check for understanding.
I think I switched that one around with the fourth step now. I did plan specific learning activities. Would you like me to go over it again?
Okay, so number 3 is plan specific learning activities, and number 4 is plan to check for understanding. Okay, all good.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. So now you plan to check for learners' understanding. Now, after you've explained the topic and you've illustrated it with, for example, different examples, you now need to check whether or not the learners understand. You must check now for understanding. You can ask the learners questions. You can ask them to write down their understanding of the lesson you just had with them. You can ask them oral questions. If you, for example, ask them to write down their understanding of the topic you just completed in your lesson, if they can't write it, then you can ask them to respond orally as well. So when you plan the lesson, you will decide what questions you will ask for discussion purposes. Right? So important here with check for understanding is that you must ask questions. You must ask the learners to write down the understanding, or if they can't write it, you can ask them to respond verbally. Let's move to the first step, to develop a conclusion and the preview. Here, what you'll do here with your conclusion is you will go over the material that you've covered in class, in your lesson plan. Go over it, over your lesson. But remember, you're not going to start with the lesson from point A to point B. You will just go over the material that you've covered in class by summarizing only the main points of the lesson. You only have to summarize the main points of the lesson when you come to your conclusion and preview. Lastly, you have to create a realistic timeline. A timeline that's reachable. Yeah, it depends on what the learners need. All right? It has to do, you must actually create a strategy for a realistic timeline. Now, how are we going to create that strategies? First of all, when you set up your lesson plan, you will estimate how much time each activity will take. So, when preparing your lesson, indicate on there how much time you expect it will take you to take the learners through the lesson, to do the activities. You must also plan for question sessions after your lesson. Remember, this all determines your timeline. You as a teacher must also be flexible, and remember, remember the lesson plan is a working document. So you must be ready to adjust your lesson plan to the learner's needs. If you see something don't work in class, You change your lesson plan. You write on there, I did this differently. Why? To suit the learner's needs, to make them understand. You must be flexible. Like I've said, to adjust your lesson plan to the student's needs. And what to seem more productive, to see them more productive, rather than to stick to your original lesson plan. You must be flexible so that the lesson plan suit the learner's needs, so that they can be more productive in your lesson, rather than sticking to your original plan. All right? So the steps to remember is to outline your learning objectives, development of the introduction, plan for specific learning activities, plan to check understanding, develop conclusion and preview, and then lastly, you must create a realistic timeline. Is there any questions for me on this slide? Are you all good? All right. Yes.
All
Anyone
good.
have? Oh, all right, all right. Then I just want to add that you must present the lesson plan to the learners, as you know, and remember to get the students interested in the lesson. You must first of all tell them what the lesson plan is about, what the lesson is about, what the topic is about. If they don't understand, you first have to explain before you continue with your lesson. Then you as a teacher must also reflect on your lessons. Remember, a lesson plan might not always work. It might not always work as well as you've planned. All right? Because there's number of reasons or circumstances that it might just not work out on that specific day. And it happens. So you must take a few minutes then after each class to reflect on what worked well for you during that lesson and why, and what you could have done differently. So when you reflect on your lesson, you must ask yourself, what worked well during that lesson? What can I do differently next time? Now, let me just go over the conclusion of the lesson plan, or the preparation of the lesson planning. Like I've said before, when you prepare your lesson, you must include the subject area, the topic of your lesson, the aim of your lesson, the materials and tools that you're going to use, that is the resources. That all you must include in your lesson plan. Then remember, the time allocation is also important. That must appear on your lesson plan. All right? So, remember, you must always include all your learners in the lesson plan, because of inclusive education. Remember, when you plan, always keep in mind, all children, regardless of their ability or disability, they learn together in the same classroom. Keep that in mind when you do your lesson plan. And with inclusive education, we also believe that all children must be valued equally, and they deserve access to the same opportunities. Then children with disabilities and those without, they often achieve greater academic outcomes in an inclusive classroom. So just tell me, students, what type of integrated resources can you work into your lesson plan to encourage your learners to participate? Let me ask again, what type of integrated resources can you incorporate in your lesson plan to encourage your learners to participate in your classroom? Right? You can use collaborative interaction between the learners, problem solving. All right. You can ask them a question after the lesson to solve a certain problem solving. You can use writing in your during your lesson or after your lesson. You can ask them to do it orally, to ask questions. That is the type of integrated resources you will use in your class to encourage your learners to participate. Here they have to think. They will have to think constantly. So the inclusive strategies that you use in your classroom then, they will enable the learners with disabilities to participate in the learning experiences in your classroom on the same basis as the learners without disabilities. And how do we achieve that? We achieve that by making adjustments to the delivery of the assessment without changing the way of how you assess them. You're just going to find out different ways in how to assess them. You're going to make use of different ways to assess them. Then you will also make adjustments in teaching and learning and the assessments. You will also make adjustments according to the teaching and the learning of the learners and also the assessment. But remember, everyone in your class will be assessed on the same topics, or they will make use of the same assessment, but you will just explain it in different ways. So to be effective, so in order for you as a teacher to be effective, the lesson plan doesn't have to be a long document wherein you will describe, say, every possible scenario you have in your classroom. All right? So it does not have to be a long document where you describe every scenario that happened in your classroom. Instead of it, it should provide you with a general outline of your technical goals, your learning objectives, and how you will accomplish them. And remember what you want to do and how you want to do it. It's important. And like I've said, a productive lesson plan is not a lesson, it's not where you include everything that, or let's say a productive lesson plan is not one in which everything goes according to plan, but it is one of which both the learner and yourself can learn from each other. So when you draw up your lesson plan, it's important to first identify your objective, the specific objective that you have in mind. Then you must select the lesson plan materials and the tools that you're going to use in the lesson plan. Most importantly, you must remember the steps for preparing a lesson plan. It is the outline of your objectives, and then you must develop the introduction. You must plan for the specific learning activities you're going to use after or during your lesson. You will also check whether the learners understand. You will check for understanding. You will then develop a conclusion and a preview. Remember with that, it is to go over the material that you've covered in the class, and you will only summarize it, the main points. Then you must create a realistic timeline. So that is the 6 steps for when you're preparing a lesson. And remember to always ask yourself the questions: who am I going to teach? What am I going to teach? How am I going to teach it? And what activities will you have for the learners after your lesson plan? Is there any questions on lesson planning? Are you all good with it? Akila?
All good, thank you.
Oh, good. Thank you. Akila, you fine? Colin?
Yes, I understand.
All right, thank you. All the other learners or students, are you good with lesson planning, or do you have a question for me?
Hi, Portia.
Yes, good day.
Hi. I'm good with lesson planning, but is there perhaps an example of like practical examples of an introduction, examples of your development and conclusion?
Yes. Yes. So when you do your introduction, so for example, it's a story that you're doing. Remember when we start off with reading, I say to you, when you read to the learner, you must show them the front cover, the back cover. They must predict. All right? That can be a form of an introduction. Or you remember, if it's a storybook about animals, I told you you can have the little feely bag with a specific animal in and ask him to feel and guess what it is. That is the type of introduction I'm talking about, where you actually tap into the learner's prior knowledge to see if they understand what your topic is about. Does that answer your one question?
Yes, Portia.
All
And
right.
the development.
The development. So you're talking about development of the conclusion and the preview. Is that
The
what you're
body,
talking?
the body of the lesson.
The body of the lesson. All
Yeah.
right. So now you're going to the body of the lesson. You will be reading to the learner. All right. And while you're reading to the learner, you will ask questions. That is how we work in the body. If you take, say, for example, um, this is the reading class. If you do, let's say we do maths, all right, and we want to do addition, adding. You will explain to your learners what adding is in your introduction. Then we get to the body. You ask them to 2 plus 2 equals. And now you get to the part where you want them to actually guess the answer or try to get to the answer. Then you will ask them to get two, let's say for example, two manipulatives or four manipulatives, and you will ask them to put two down the one side to the other side, and that is how they will get to the answer because they must count. So with reading again, with the reading, you will tap into their prior knowledge first. You will read the story. Then you will ask them during the story, what do you think what will happen next? Why did it happen? What do you think? How will the story end? That is how you work through the body of your lesson. All right, by asking questions constantly. At the end, you will do the same. But remember, at the end, you will ask them particular questions you want them to answer. But during the lesson, you will ask random questions. Is that understood? Do you understand now?
Yes, Portia. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else have a question for me? So you all good with lesson planning now? Just remember, when you plan a lesson, it is what you want the learners to know and be able to do at the end of your lesson. Just keep that in mind. So thank you, students. When you plan, you must plan wise for quality and effective teaching. All right. Thank you. Now, students, I would like to know Saturday, if we can have a class on Saturday. Remember, we spoke about it the last time. And the time slot I can give you is from 12 to 1:30. Just by a show of hands, give me indication if you will be able to attend this class on Saturday. All right.
Yes, Portia.
All right. Thank you. So then Saturday we'll have a class and I will do assessments with you. All right. Assessments. How do we assess grade R's grade R learners, pre-grade R learners. So our topic will be assessments on Saturday. So Saturday morning, it will be 12 until 1:30. All right. And your exams, is it on the 29th of October? Am I correct? Is it 29th of October for EML?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Thank you. So we have 2 weeks left, and then we can also discuss, say, next week's lesson, how to approach your answers. Not the answers, a question paper. All right. So students,
Portia,
please. Yes.
is the CIC classes also on Saturday?
The CIC is tomorrow. We're going to
But
have a
you
class
said we're
tomorrow.
having two classes
Yes.
because you still have you have 4 topics that you must still go through with
Yes.
us. So you
Now,
said you're gonna have one tomorrow and on Saturday.
now just tell me quickly, when are you writing CIC?
On Tuesday.
On Tuesday. All right.
Yeah.
Tuesday. All right. So I'll let you know tomorrow about the next lesson
Okay.
for CIC. All right. All right. Any other questions, students? All right. Please don't forget to type your student numbers in the chat function and complete the feedback form. And if you want to have a one-on-one session with me, remember Adele posted the link, and you can just request for a one-on-one session if you have any problems with your module or how to approach a question in the exams. Thank you very much, students. See you Saturday at 12. We'll start at 12 to 1:30. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Yes,
Adele,
Thanks.
Yes.
Adele, you saw.
can you possibly please just repeat? You said for technical help, you need to email your lecturer, that's CTN and what
No,
other
no,
email did
no.
you say? Because you said 3.
Yeah. Remember, what you need to do is have your lecturer's details on hand for every exams. Email
That's
address.
correct.
You
Yes,
email
but
the lecturer. You CCCTN TUT and exams@unisa.ac.za. But we will have this conversation. How many sessions do you have left next week? And then is there a session the following week as well? I don't know what Portia's plans are for additional sessions, but I would like us to have another conversation just to finish up on exams. Did you see the announcement I posted that UNISA is going to provide data again?
I saw. Thank you.
Good. All right. But we will have the exam conversation again. It's important.
Okay, all good. Just to clarify, because we have class tomorrow, which is CIC, and then according to my understanding, we already have 2 classes on Saturday, which is EML and EMA, and
That's
then
right.
possibly another CIC one. So I'm not too sure when we're going to have this discussion about the exams, before the exams, as we are writing the 20th, which is next week, Tuesday.
Oh, are you writing on Tuesday?
Yes.
What are you writing then?
CIC.
Okay. Oh,
So
Portia?
yes, you're writing CIC on the 20th.
Yes, that's correct.
Is it? Isn't it EMA?
No, EMA is the 22nd.
Oh, because I had EMA for the 20th, 22nd. Yeah, so we must have a class on Saturday for CIC as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Yes,
it's
definitely.
really difficult because we're going into 1 o'clock already. I saw
Yes.
this EML class is 1 o'clock already, and
Yes.
students that's working like myself, we
Mm,
won't be able to attend. We will
Yeah.
only get the recording, hopefully.
Yes. Also, we can
Yeah.
make it for Friday, then the CIC class. I don't have a problem with Friday evening.
Yeah, I didn't want to speak out of my turn. We also need to ask the other students.
Yes, yes, yes. So yeah, I'll ask them tomorrow.
Okay, all good.
All right.
Thank you. Enjoy your
Okay, so
evening.
your time is really
Pleasure, you
limited.
too.
Sorry?
I said your time is really limited.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now is the time to start taking your natural comments and stuff, eh?
If only they work.
Yeah, they do. The natural products, they do work. Prozen works.
Yes.
I have these, what is these called? Rescue Remedy tablets. I take 4